I turned my boyfriend's sacred family ritual into a TikTok for clout. Now I'm performing an autopsy on a dead relationship. The silence is the loudest thing in the apartment now that half of everything is gone. His ugly, comfortable armchair, the overflowing bookshelf, the faint scent of his cologne, all surgically removed. It's left a void so clean it feels sterile. I'm sitting on the floor in the middle of it all, my phone in my hand. On the screen, the 7-second video plays on a silent, endless loop. There I am, grinning stupidly for my followers, a cutesy, upbeat song playing in the background. A glittery, oops, sticker pops over my head as I deliberately splash the rice wine onto the dark wood of the memorial tablet. The camera then shakily pans to Jin. It's his face that I'm dissecting. It's not anger. It's the look of something priceless shattering on cold tile. I keep replaying it, trying to find the exact millisecond I became a ghost to him. It's funny, the things your brain chooses to remember when you're trying to pinpoint the origin of a disaster. I remember how safe I felt with Jin. He was solid, grounded in a way I never was. He had traditions, a sense of duty to his family, a quiet confidence that didn't need to be advertised. I was, and still am, a collection of borrowed opinions and trending aesthetics, constantly shifting to fit the room. My friends, a tight-knit circle of chronically online, self-proclaimed culture critics, were the room I was trying to fit into the most. Their currency was irony. Nothing was sacred. Everything was content. Sincerity was cringe. Passion was performative. They could deconstruct a film, a relationship, a person's deeply held belief into a series of snarky, shareable hot takes before the credits even rolled. And I, desperate for their approval, their laughter that felt like a validation of my entire existence, started selling pieces of gin to them for cheap laughs. It started small. Over brunch, I turned an intimate moment. Him patiently showing me how his grandmother taught him to perfectly pleat dumplings, into a stand-up routine. You guys, he was so serious about his folds, like he was diffusing a tiny, dough-based bomb. It's adorable, but I'm like, babe, it's going into my stomach either way. They'd howl with laughter, and that sound was a drug, a warm rush that told me I belonged. The performance escalated. I posted a picture of the bookshelf he'd meticulously organized for me by genre and color. The caption, his idea of a wild Friday night, send help, my traditional boyfriend. It got over 100 likes. He once saw a notification and asked me, gently, why do you talk about me like that online? Like I'm a specimen in a jar. I felt a tiny, sharp sting of shame, but I buried it immediately. I just kissed his cheek and said, oh, honey, they love you. They think it's charming. It's a term of endearment. The term of endearment was a lie. It was a label I slapped on him to make his earnestness palatable for my cynical friends. He once spent a whole weekend working on a piece of calligraphy for our anniversary, a single character that meant serenity. He explained the balance of the strokes, the history behind the radical, the way the ink bled into the paper to create a feeling, not just a word. It was beautiful. I took a photo, posted it to my Instagram story and wrote, he's in his ancient wisdom era, I guess. At least it'll look cool on the wall. My friend Chloe replied with a string of laughing emojis. That felt more real to me than the gift itself. I was the star of a show I was writing in real time, and Jin, my quiet, loving Jin, was my most reliable prop. I curated him, packaged him, turned the living, breathing man I loved into a brand that made me seem interesting and worldly to a group of people who wouldn't know genuine culture if it sat on their faces. Every laugh I earned, every like I collected, felt like a point scored, a step further into the inner circle. The worst part is I knew, somewhere deep down, that it was cheap. It was a betrayal, but the validation was instant and his love felt unconditional. I took it for granted. I thought it was a permanent resource I could just keep drawing from to fuel my pathetic social climbing. The week before we were due to drive to his parents' house, he sat me down on the couch. He turned off the TV, which was his first signal that this was serious. Gemma, he started, his voice low and steady in a way that always made me feel like a ship dropping anchor. About this weekend, the ceremony. It's a very big deal for my family. I nodded, trying to look engaged, but my mind was already buzzing. My phone, lying face down on the coffee table, felt like a hot coal. I had already dropped the news in my group chat with Sasha and Chloe. Heading into the heart of ancient tradition this weekend, wish me luck Elmau. The replies were exactly what I'd hoped for. OMG get vids. And from Sasha, don't come back without at least one good cringe story. Gee, we're counting on you. I was a performer who had just been handed her script. It's for my grandfather, my gong gong, Jin continued, his gaze distant, fixed on a point somewhere over my shoulder. He passed away before I was born, but this ceremony, it's how we keep him with us. My grandma, she still sets a place for him at dinner on his birthday. This is the one day of the year the whole family comes together to, I don't know, to report to him, to show him we're okay. He looked at me then, and his eyes were so open, so vulnerable. It means everything to my Nai. She's the matriarch. Her approval is important. She's very traditional, and she doesn't say much, but she sees everything. I know now that this was the moment. This was the clear, flashing warning sign. He was handing me a map of his heart, showing me the most fragile, sacred places. And I was looking right past him, already storyboarding a tick-tock in my head. This is the emotional backstory. The setup. My inner director screamed. The contrast between his solemnity and my planned ironic take felt like comedic genius. When he spoke of his grandmother, all I could think was perfect. The silent, judgmental old lady, a classic archetype. He took my hands. His were warm and steady. I just need you to be respectful. That's all I'm asking. Please, Gemma, no jokes for your friends, no photos during the important parts. Just be present. With me. For this one day. I looked into his earnest, pleading eyes and felt a flicker of something, maybe guilt. But it was quickly extinguished by the brighter, hotter flame of anticipated social validation. I saw the likes, the laughing crying emojis, the future brunch where I would regale my friends with tales of my hilarious and edgy weekend. I told myself I could do both. I could be respectful enough while still getting the content I needed. It wasn't really a betrayal if I did it subtly, right? Of course, babe, I said, squeezing his hands back and giving him my most reassuring smile. I get it. It's important to you, so it's important to me. I'll be on my absolute best behavior, I promise. And in that moment, I think I even managed to convince myself I meant it. The lie was so good, it even fooled the liar. The ancestral hall was attached to the back of his parents' house, a room I'd never been in before. It was dark and cool, the air thick with the sweet, heavy scent of sandalwood incense and something else, the dry, ancient smell of old wood. Intricate wooden tablets, each carved with names I couldn't read, lined the walls like a silent army of ancestors. An altar stood at the center, laden with offerings, gleaming oranges, a whole roasted chicken, and small, steaming cups of tea. The silence in the room wasn't empty. It was a living thing, full of weight and history. It pressed in on me, broken only by the soft, reverent murmurs of Jin's family members speaking in low Cantonese. It was deeply, profoundly serious, and I was bored out of my mind. My discomfort felt like a physical itch. I was an actress who had forgotten all her lines. I didn't belong here. I was an outsider, a spectacle. I could feel the eyes of his aunts and uncles on me, their polite smiles not quite reaching their eyes. My anxiety began to spiral, a frantic buzzing under my skin that screamed, do something. Say something. Perform. And my phone became my shield, my escape hatch from a reality I didn't understand and couldn't control. I started filming. At first, it was subtle, almost respectful. A quick, panning shot of the smoke curling from the incense sticks, which I captioned Vibes. A close-up of a perfectly peeled pomelo, hashtagged foodie. But the more I filmed, the bolder I got. I was detached now, watching the whole thing through my screen, no longer a participant but a documentarian of the absurd. I zoomed in on Jin's face as he bowed, his expression a mixture of grief and reverence that was so pure it felt alien to me. In my head, I was already editing. I found a trending, goofy audio clip, a sped-up song about being in a silly, goofy mood, and pictured it playing over his solemn movements. I saved the clip of him to my drafts. My superstitious boyfriend. The dopamine hit was immediate and potent, a tiny chemical reward for my desecration. Then came the offering of the rice wine. Jin's grandmother, a tiny woman who seemed to be made of bird bones and iron will, handed each of us a small ceramic cup. Jin had explained the ritual to me in the car. You bow 3 times, then pour a small amount of the wine in a circle in front of the main tablet, a symbolic offering for the ancestor. As I stood there, the cool ceramic cup in my hand, the thought hit me like a lightning bolt. It was so perfect, so undeniably viral. A simple, respectful pouring was boring. It had no narrative, no punchline, but a clumsy, funny little accident, that was content. That was relatable. That was the kind of self-deprecating humor my friends lived for. I could literally see the tick-tock in my mind. Cut to me, looking adorably clumsy. A little stumble. The wine splashes, add a glittery oops sticker. The comments would pour in. LMAO me, Gemma, you're a menace. It would be perfect. The voice of reason, the echo of Jin's pleading face on the couch, was a faint whisper. The roar of my audience, the imagined sound of their laughter and likes, was a deafening tidal wave. I chose the roar. I positioned my phone, propping it up against a bowl of oranges to get the perfect angle, making sure the main tablet was in frame. I hit record. I took a deep breath, put on my best oopsie-daisy smile for the camera, and then, with a theatrical little stumble that I'd practiced in my head a dozen times, I let the rice wine splash directly onto the dark, polished wood of his grandfather's memorial tablet. I even let out a little exaggerated gasp. Oops, I chirped, looking directly at my phone's camera with wide, performatively innocent eyes. For a single, horrifying second, the only sound in the room was the soft drip of rice wine running down the carved characters of the tablet. The air didn't just get quiet, it solidified. Every person in that room froze, their faces a gallery of stunned disbelief. I saw Jin's uncle drop his incense sticks. I saw his mother's hand fly to her mouth. But I only really saw Jin. His face, which had been so full of solemn love just moments before, went completely blank. It was a terrifying, hollow kind of emptiness, as if he was watching a stranger. The color drained from his skin, leaving him looking pale and fragile under the dim light. My stupid, performative smile faltered. The imagined laughter of my friends evaporated, replaced by the suffocating silence of this room. I opened my mouth to launch into my pre-planned apology, the one where I'd laugh it off and say, "Oh my God, I'm so clumsy, I'm so sorry." The one that was meant for the camera, not for them. But I never got the chance. Before I could utter a sound, Jin's grandmother, the woman I had mentally dismissed as a silent, traditional prop in my story, took a single, deliberate step forward. She had been a ghost in the background until this moment. Now, she was the only thing in the room that felt real. She looked from the wine-soaked tablet to my phone still recording on the altar, and then finally, her gaze landed on me. Her eyes were not angry. They were not sad. They were like a judge's gavel, cold and final. And then she spoke. Not in Cantonese, as I had always assumed was her only language. She spoke in perfect, crisp, unaccented English, her voice slicing through the silence like a shard of glass. "Turn off your phone," she said. It wasn't a request. It was a command that vibrated with an authority I had never encountered in my life. And then, without breaking eye contact, she delivered the final verdict, not just to me, but to her grandson, to the entire room, to the ancestors themselves. "This girl does not deserve a place in our family." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Humiliation, hot and acidic, flooded my entire body. She hadn't just scolded me, she had surgically excised me. In one sentence, she had seen through my entire pathetic performance, my desperate need for validation, my shallow, vapid existence, and dismissed it all as worthless. The long drive back to our apartment was a masterclass in silence. Jin didn't look at me. He didn't speak. He just drove, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of the words his grandmother had spoken, the sound of the dripping wine, the ghost of my idiotic oops. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. When we got back to the apartment, the suffocating silence from the car followed us inside. I kept waiting for the explosion, for the yelling, for the tears. I was prepared for a fight I could navigate, manipulate, and probably win with a torrent of apologies and self-flagellation. What I wasn't prepared for was the calm. Jin walked to the bedroom and came back out with an empty suitcase. He didn't slam it down. He placed it gently on the floor and opened it. Then he started moving through the apartment with a quiet, methodical efficiency that was more terrifying than any rage could ever be. He went to the bathroom and collected his toothbrush and shaving cream. He went to the closet and took half the hangers. He didn't throw things. He folded them. I followed him like a lost dog, a frantic stream of words pouring out of me. Jin, I'm so sorry. It was a stupid, stupid joke. It was for my friends, it meant nothing. I didn't think I wasn't thinking. Please just talk to me, scream at me, anything. He didn't even look at me. It was like I was a ghost. He just continued his work, moving from room to room, a silent collector of his own life. Finally, as he was zipping up the suitcase, I stood in front of the door, blocking his path. You can't just leave, I pleaded, my voice cracking. He finally looked at me then. His eyes were clear, and that was the most painful part. There was no anger, no heartbreak, just a profound, soul-deep exhaustion. He looked at me the way you'd look at a piece of furniture you no longer owned. You don't respect me, Gemma, he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. And you don't respect anything that I care about. He paused, his gaze flicking for a moment to my phone, which was sitting on the counter. The only thing you respect is that screen. The audience behind it. I can't compete with that. I don't want to. He stepped around me, opened the door, and walked out. He didn't look back. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. A notification, not from him. It was a comment on the TikTok video I had, in my panicked state, forgotten to delete. It was from Sasha. OMG, Gemma, this is iconic. In the days that followed, I discovered the true meaning of his departure. It wasn't a dramatic exit. It was a surgical removal. My number was blocked. My social media accounts were blocked. When I tried his work email, I got an automated reply. He was gone. I tried reaching out to my friends, desperate for an ally, for someone to tell me he was overreacting. But for the first time, their responses were hesitant, laced with an awkwardness I'd never heard from them before. Sasha, my biggest cheerleader, just said, "Wow, that's intense. I'm sorry, gee, I gotta run." No one wanted to be near the wreckage. The final blow came from a place I never expected. My TikTok, the one I thought was so clever, had somehow broken containment from my small circle. Someone, maybe one of Jin's cousins, had found it. The video was flooded with comments, thousands of them, in English and what I assumed was Cantonese. They weren't just angry, they were disgusted. I was no longer the witty protagonist of my own story. I was the villain in someone else's. The clown, stripped of her makeup, standing alone in a spotlight of public shame.